Hi guys, Mrs. Vance again. We're going to talk today about specific cells of the immune system in Part 7 of the notes for Unit 12. So we talked about an overview of how the immune system works, and we mentioned some of the cells, but let's talk about what they are and what they do. So the first one we'll talk about is a macrophage. Macrophages are very large cells, as you might guess from their name, and they are basically moving around in your various tissues of your body all the time looking for bad guys to gobble up. They actually eat pathogens and infected cells, okay, by phagocytosis, and then they actually display the antigens on their surface to activate specific immune cells like T cells and B cells. They are a type of antigen presenting cell. They're one of several different kinds that will present the antigens for the stimulation of the immune system on their surface. The next one is another kind of cell that's very common in your subcutaneous tissues underneath your skin. These are called dendritic cells. These are the professional antigen presenting cells. That's their number one job. And basically what they're doing is they're acting as a messenger between the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. They activate the T cells. They're part of the innate immune system, but then they activate the T cells to stimulate the rest of the immune response, because they are definitely antigen-presenting cells to stimulate that. The term dendritic comes from the fact that they have all these branches sticking off of them. Dendros is the Greek word for tree, and so dendritic refers to usually something like a tree or tree branches. So you can see the branches here extending off the sides of the cell. Helper T cells are kind of like the major general of the immune system. They are activated by the APCs, by the antigen-presenting cells, and then they can activate the cytotoxic or killer T cells as well as B cells and stimulate both of them to multiply. These are the cells that are primarily affected by the HIV virus, which is one of the reasons that HIV is so severe, because it actually destroys the immune system by inactivating or deactivating the helper T cells. B cells, which again, as a reminder, finish their maturation process within the bone marrow where they're formed. They multiply into these plasma cells that are basically antibody factories. They make lots and lots and lots of antibodies. Oftentimes in pictures, it doesn't show it in this particular one, but a lot of times in pictures, like in your textbook and places like that, they're shown with a lot of endoplasmic reticulum, which is understandable because they're making lots and lots of proteins. And basically, they label the antibodies, label invaders for destruction by macrophages and other phagocytic cells, because the antibodies kind of attract them. The label that they have that labels the invaders for destruction is the antibody. It's kind of like a red flag saying, okay, here's what you need to work on right now. Very, very important. Cytotoxic T cells, also called killer T cells, actually attack and kill infected cells. They punch holes in the cell membrane. They release a chemical called perforin that actually perforates or punches holes in cell membrane of cells that are infected. This is because they're killing those cells so that they don't have the ability to continue producing more pathogens. And again, they know which cells to attack because of the antibodies that are attached to it from the antibodies that are present there. There are receptor proteins for the antibodies on the surface of the cytotoxic T cells. So you have all of these different kinds of cells here, the T cells and the B cells, macrophages, the dendritic cells, all of those different kinds of things, they have those antigens on their surface. As a reminder, the antigens are kind of like surface markers on the pathogens. They're oftentimes proteins or some kind of carbohydrate complex or something like that stimulates that immune response. And then the antibodies, of course, are proteins that are produced by the plasma cells and the other B cells that actually bind to the antigen on the pathogen and actually draw attention to it so that the rest of the immune system will attack it. So both B cells and T cells produce other kinds of cells called memory cells. They're memory B cells and memory T cells. And these memory cells are the key to your long-lasting immunity to things. They remember the antigens and immediately begin to produce plasma cells as soon as they're stimulated, okay? And also activate killer T cells, preventing disease conditions. So the reason people have different reactions to exposure to things is because they might have a better memory or more recent memory or a stronger memory to the viruses and bacteria. Vaccines work by producing memory cells, okay? Vaccines are weakened or dead organisms or molecules of those that we introduce to the body, and they elicit the production of antibodies and memory cells to prevent the reoccurrence of that disease. We'll talk a little bit more about vaccines in another part of notes coming up after this one. Now, sometimes things go wrong in the immune system, and we end up with various immune system disorders. And so some of these are more serious than others, but we can't talk about the immune system without talking about some of the disorders of the immune system. Allergies are one type of immune system disorder that most of us have. It's basically based on an inflammatory response, and it's an overreaction of your immune system to various kinds of antigens in the environment that should not be harmful, but your body thinks they might be. Things like pollen and dust and things like that. Sometimes food products, sometimes some of the chemicals or some of the molecules that are in various kinds of food can cause an allergic response. And basically, it's just your immune system overreacting to something that should not be harmful to it. There are some diseases that are called autoimmune diseases, where your immune system attacks your own cells. For some reason, it gets turned around backwards, basically, and thinks that these type of cells are harmful. Things like lupus, insulin-dependent diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. There are a bunch of different ones that are autoimmune kind of diseases. And so basically, that's also an overreaction of your immune system against part of your own body. Those can be very serious sometimes and definitely life-threatening at times. Immunodeficiency diseases are when some of the parts of your immune system are missing as a result of an or actually non-functional or something like that. These are usually illustrated by having frequent and recurrent infections. A lot of times there are infections that normally would not be harmful to you that end up being harmful because your immune system is not working properly. Hodgkin's disease, cancer of the lymphocytes, is a type of immunodeficiency disease. The number one immunodeficiency disease that we think about most frequently nowadays is HIV. The HIV virus destroys the helper T cells. And of course, like I said earlier, the helper T cells are kind of one of the main things that control a lot of your immune response to various kinds of pathogens, stimulating the B cells and the T cells to go about doing the other parts of their defense. And the HIV virus, the human immunodeficiency virus, actually destroys those cells, and it results in a condition we call AIDS, which stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. And that people that die from this condition actually don't die from AIDS, they die from infections that normally would not happen because your immune system can't fight them off. So it's really very serious. They've been working on a vaccine for HIV for about 40 years now and haven't really found one that really works long term. Fortunately, nowadays there are various kinds of medications that you can take that will help prevent the total destruction of your T cells really quickly and can prolong your life for an indefinite period of time. So that will end the notes. There's also an activity about cells of the immune system using a click and learn from Biointeractive, and that'll maybe give you a little bit more details about some of these specific kinds of cells.